What's up, guys? It's Dr. Fantasy here, coming at you with our first post draft rookie rankings. Watched the draft all weekend, and I just wanted to kind of quickly go through some of my top rookies for this upcoming fantasy season. More specifically, I'm going to be talking Dynasty a little bit. So I actually ranked how many do we have here? 78 players that were drafted, and this is all quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. I'm going to kind of briefly go through my top 40 here and kind of mention some guys that I really like in dynasty leagues. So to kick it off, I'm going to talk a little bit about KJ Hill, who went a little later than I think a lot of people were expecting. He ended up with the LA Chargers at pick 220. He's a speedy guy. I think that he's going to have the ability to really fit in well with that offense in between Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So I'm kind of interested to see if he gets an opportunity to be on the field. And if so, I think he's a great late dynasty pick that could really pay off huge dividends for you in the long term. So he number 40 guy. Number 39 for me is Colin Johnson from Texas, a guy that I really liked coming in. He went to the Jacksonville Jaguars at pick 165. Once again, a big bodied guy. I really like the Jaguars offense this year with Jay Gruden as the offensive coordinator. So I think he's going to really complement DJ Chark there. And I think D.D. Westbrook's contract expires after this season. So long term, I really like Colin Johnson's prospects. DJ Chark, Gardner Minshew, if Gardner Minshew is the long term solution there. I think they took Chennault, which was a great pick for him. I think the Jaguars actually have some weapons there, and I'm really interested to see how it all comes together. Then my number. Let me go up here. Number 38 for me is Lynn Bowden. I think a lot of people were excited with him landing in Las Vegas. I don't think I'm as optimistic as other people. I think he's more going to be an Antoine Randall kind of player. They took him pick 80, so I think he's going to be really valuable in real life. They're going to find different formations and different ways to use him throughout the season. But I really long term think he's more of an Antoine Randall kind of player. So I don't expect him to have huge fantasy numbers, but in real life, maybe use him for some wildcat formations. He played a little quarterback at Kentucky, so he's a very versatile guy, and I think he's going to be valuable for that Raiders offense, but I don't have high expectations for him from a fantasy perspective. Number 37 is a guy that I was very high on entering the draft, Jalen Hertz, who ended up with the Philadelphia Eagles, which was a little disappointing for me. I really don't think it's the most ideal landing spot. I really wanted him to go to the Steelers because I think long term they would have really used his skill set appropriately. But he ends up with the Eagles. They have a history of developing quarterbacks. Maybe Carson Wentz continues to struggle with injuries and he's able to step in and really perform well in that Eagles offense. But it might be a few years before we really see him perform in that offense. Number 36 for me is Joshua Kelly, who is a running back from, well, now he's with the Los Angeles Chargers. They picked him number 112 overall. This is a really interesting name to me. They still have Justin Jackson there to pair along with Austin Eckler. But Josh Kelly, I really think, can be a guy that steps in and takes that role from Justin Jackson if he doesn't perform. So I think that's going to be a situation to monitor. It's going to go right around the third round or so, in my opinion, in dynasty drafts. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out as well. Number 35 for me is Devin Asiasi, and now the New England Patriots tight end, Gronk's successor, if you will, and they also took a very versatile guy in Dalton Keene. So I'm really interested to see how that dynamic plays out. But Asiasi is a very athletic guy. Josh McDaniels loves using tight ends in his offense. So he's my number 2 dynasty rookie tight end, and I expect him to perform really well in the Patriots offense. Number 34 for me is Darrynton Evans. He is now running back for the Tennessee Titans. They picked him number 93. I think Evans is a prototypical third down back. I think he complements Derrick Henry really well. I think he compares pretty decently to Dion Lewis, so I think that he'll fill in for that third down role. So in PPR leagues, I think he could be very relevant as Derrick Henry's complement. And long term, we'll see where Derrick Henry goes, but I really don't think Evans projects as a three down back, more of a third down back kind of guy. Number 33 for me, and this is one QB, by the way, let me just mention. Jordan Love for me. I'm not the biggest Jordan Love fan. He's probably going to sit on the bench for at least 3 years if he sticks with the Packers. So I don't think that he's going to be overly fantasy relevant for a while. You can stick him in your taxi squad if you have a league that plays with a taxi squad. But overall, I'm not a big Jordan Love fan. He really struggled with his decision making. I do think this is an ideal situation for him to learn behind Aaron Rodgers. Matt LaFleur is looking for his future quarterback, looking beyond Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's a good fit, but I'm not overly optimistic with what the Packers can do long term with Jordan Love. Moving on to number 32 is Bryan Edwards, who ended with the Las Vegas Raiders. Edwards is a big receiver. I think that he can be very fantasy relevant. I think it's really challenging because they have Tyrell Williams there, who they just signed to a big deal only after one season. It was a 4-year, $44 million deal. I'm really interested to see how this wide receiver core ends up shaking out with Bryan Edwards, with Ruggs. I think it's a really tough situation to monitor. I think they can opt out after this year and cut Tyrell Williams and really have it not hurt them financially. But I'm interested to see how the Bryan Edwards situation shakes out long term. I see I have a question down here from John. Looks like he's got some Kerryon and Darrell Henderson shares. I'm a Rams fan, actually. I think that Darrell Henderson's still going to split touches with Cam Akers in year one. I don't think Akers is going to take that backfield by storm right away. So I wouldn't sell Darrell Henderson when his value's at his lowest. To me, he'd be more of a hold right now. Kerryon, I'm not as optimistic about. I love Deandre Swift, think he's a legitimate three-down back. And then they went and also got Huntley later in the draft, who looks like he can profile, and he's later in my rankings. I think he profiles really well as a third-down back. So Kerryon's value really isn't going to get any lower. If you have a big Kerryon fan in your league, I would definitely try to dump him off if you can. But I think even short-term, that Kerryon's value is really not even a flex play. I think Swift is going to take touches really quickly. Maybe Kerryon's more of a third down back to begin with, but over time they took Huntley, who can be really explosive as well. So I don't like Kerryon's long-term prospects, but I never recommend to somebody that you sell at their lowest value. I either like to hold them or try to sell when their value is high. So at this point, I would say they're both holds. Maybe Kerryon goes to another team where he has another opportunity, and same with Henderson. Maybe he performs well in a timeshare, and neither one of those backs really ever takes over. But I never recommend to people that you sell a guy when he's at his lowest value. Number 31, going back to my rankings here, as Devin Duvernay, who is now with the Baltimore Ravens. They get, once again, another really speedy wide receiver. Not as fast as Hollywood Brown, but I think Duvernay is going to fight with Willie Snead for snaps there to begin with. I think eventually you're going to see Hollywood and Duvernay kind of be a 1-2 really speedy punch there. And I think that's kind of how the Ravens are trying to build their offense. Really a ground and pound game with J.K. Dobbins, Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and the rest of the league, it seems like this year. And they're really going to be tight end centric and stretch the field with speedy receivers. They took another big bodied receiver later in the draft, but it seems like they're really committed to stretching the field with speedy receivers. Going to number 30 is Justin Herbert for me. I was pretty vocal before the draft. I'm not a big Justin Herbert fan. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. He's definitely going to have an opportunity to succeed. They're going to give him every opportunity, picking him 6th overall. He's got some weapons there now with KJ Hill that they just drafted, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen, a great receiving back, and Austin Eckler. They didn't really improve the line much, I think, throughout the draft, but I think that when you draft a guy that high, you're going to give him every opportunity to succeed. So I have him at number 3 on my 1 QB list. Not overly high, but he's going to have an opportunity. I'm not optimistic, but I know a lot of guys love the intangibles that he has, so, or the physical traits more that he has. So moving to number 29 is one of my favorite sleepers before the draft, and I think he landed in a pretty good spot with my Rams, Van Jefferson, wide receiver with the Rams now. They took him pick 57. He's a very polished route runner. I think he's going to slot in at number 3 right away, right behind Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. They still have Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett there as well, but I think he's going to slot in as the number 3 guy. I think the Rams are going to be very pass heavy this year, so I like Van Jefferson as a sleeper in that offense, and I think he has a lot of talent, and he's a very polished route runner, which I really like. Number 28 is KJ Hamler, who is now with the Denver Broncos. Hamler, you can pencil him in right now as the Broncos slot receiver. I do think the Broncos are going to have a little bit of an issue spreading the ball around, but I love Hamler's speed and potential in the slot. Next to Judy and Sutton, they have Noah Fant. They have Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay in the backfield, who both have the ability to catch the ball. So I think it's going to be a really crowded offense as far as target goes for the Denver Broncos, but I still like Hamler's ability to connect with Drew Lock in that offense. Number 27, I have Jacob Eason. I have him at 3rd on my QB Dynasty rankings right now for rookies. I think this is a perfect landing spot for him with the Colts. Phillip Rivers is only on that 1-year deal. Eason can sit behind him, learn from Rivers for a year. And Jacob Eason really is the perfect Frank Reich quarterback. Big arm, profiles well in that offense, can sling it for him. I wasn't the biggest Jacob Eason fan, but I think the Colts were the best situation that he could land in. So I have him as a early 3rd round pick in 1 QB Dynasty leagues right now. Number 26 is my number 1 rookie tight end, Cole Kmet, and this is for Dynasty leagues. Jimmy Graham's going to be there this season, going to take some of the playing time away from Kmet, but overall Kmet profiles as a 3-down tight end. He has a great ability to catch the ball, a fantastic ability to catch the ball. They do have 10 tight ends that they're paying on their roster this year, so it was a little bit of a questionable pick, and I know Ryan Pace got torn up on Twitter for it, but Kmet's still a talented tight end. He's going to go within the probably first few picks of the 3rd round. Someone might reach on him in the 2nd round. I personally am not taking a tight end that early. Then Nick asked down below, is Jordan Love a top 5 QB yet? No, and I don't believe he ever will be. And you know that. Then number 25, I have Zach Moss, who's with the Buffalo Bills. He's going to be more of a big bruising kind of back. I love Devin Singletary. I think he has a lot of potential to be even better than what he showed last year, and he was really good last year too. But Zach Moss is a bruiser. I don't expect him to eat into Devin Singletary's carries too much. I know a lot of people are worried about their Devin Singletary shares. I wouldn't personally be worried. I think they're 2 completely different kind of backs. Singletary will still get the passing down work and a lot of the early down work. So I really think that Zach Moss is going to be more relevant in standard leagues and not PPR leagues. And he'll vulture a lot of those touchdowns. Number 24 for me is Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I think he landed in a he didn't go until the 6th round, which was a little surprising to me. I think his QB play at Michigan really hurt him, but I really like Donovan Peoples-Jones' potential in the Browns offense, and I think his stock goes up quite a bit. I think that he can be a big-bodied receiver next to Beckham. You throw Landry in the slot, and that's just more weapons for Baker. You have Kevin Stefanski there, whose offense is much more polished than Freddie Kitchens, and that's putting it lightly. So I think there's a lot to like with Peoples-Jones going to the Browns, and I'm excited about it. Jesse asked what I think about the Chiefs' backfield. I love Clyde Edwards Hilaire. I coined the nickname before, the Fresh Prince of Hilaire. He was actually my favorite running back coming into this class. I think he's a true 3-down back. He caught 55 passes for LSU last season, so obviously, he has a great ability out of the backfield. The biggest thing I worry about with his receiving production is I think it's a little overstated just because Mahomes likes to sling it down the field, and I don't see him checking it off to hel-aire frequently. I've never been a big Damian Williams fan. I don't think he's a 3-down back. I think he's a solid backup running back, But I don't think the Chiefs are going to take a running back in the first round and not use him appropriately. And Andy Reid already said that he's he's Brian Westbrook except better. So I think he's going to create screenplays and opportunities for Hilaire to be successful. I actually have him as my redraft running back number 9 in PPR leagues right now, which is very high. But even if he catches 50 passes out of the backfield with 1,200 total yards, it's not out of the realm of possibility in that offense. So I'm excited for Hilaire and to see what he can do. Going back to my rookie rankings, number 23, I have A.J. Dillon, who ended up with the Packers. And back-to-back picks, the Packers make choices that really seem like they're focused on the future. Not sure if Aaron Jones is going to be their running back long-term there, so they took A.J. Dillon, who's more of a bruiser to me. I really think they're going to need another back to pair along with him if they don't have Jamal Williams long-term, but he's a bruiser with the Packers. Matt LaFleur is going to give him the chance, so I think based on this pick, I would say that Aaron Jones isn't going to be the answer, or I won't say the answer won't be with Green Bay long term, and that they're going to give A.J. Dillon a chance and pair him up with somebody else. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the future for A.J. Dillon, although I think he's more of a big bruising back, and I really don't think he profiles as a 3-down guy. Number 22 for me is Antonio Gandy-Golden, who ended with the Washington Redskins. Came from small school Liberty. I'm really excited for this opportunity for him. He's a big-bodied receiver. I think he can profile like an A.J. Brown type with a big body, make plays down the field. And I think from day one he's going to have the opportunity to start across the field from Terry McLaurin. They have Steven Sims in the slot, who I still like and think will get an opportunity. So I really like this landing spot for Gandy-Golden, not only for dynasty purposes, but even in redraft purposes. I think it's possible that if Dwayne Haskins improves, that he'll have a little bit of value as a late-round sleeper. Number 21 for me is Tua. Tank for Tua finally comes to fruition after a year of planning, even though the Dolphins ended on a high note last season. I love Tua. I think he profiles as Russell Wilson, but a little more of a pocket passer. Super accurate. He's got to learn how to stay healthy and how to avoid big hits. But if you look at the Dolphins draft overall, they really focused on beefing up that offensive line. So they recognize where their weaknesses are, and they're giving Tua every opportunity to succeed. I still think in the future they're going to have to look to add another big weapon for him. I really like Mike Gesicki, and I expect him to have a big season with a rookie quarterback at the helm. They have Devontae Parker, who showed flashes last year. Preston Williams was really good before he got hurt, but I still think probably not this season, but next season they're going to have to add another big weapon. And I really expect, with all the draft capital that they spent to, everything they've been building up to get to, I think they're going to give him every single opportunity to be successful. Number 20 is probably the biggest bodied wide receiver in this year's rookie class, Chase Claypool. He ended up with the Steelers, another landing spot that I really like. I think that he can profile as a starting receiver right next to Juju. Deontay Johnson, who I really like, is a smaller guy. He's only 5'10", probably more of a slot guy, but I think Claypool from day one is going to be a red zone threat. I think he's going to get his targets, and he profiles really well long-term as well in that Steelers offense. Number 19, going back-to-back Steelers here, Anthony Mcfarland, who I like this landing spot as well. And I think right away he is the most explosive running back on the Steelers. I like James Conner, but it seems like there's going to be a running back by committee there this year. Redraft leagues, I'm not really going to touch James Conner, Anthony McFarland, Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels. You pick your favorite running back. I'm not really going to take him in a redraft league. But for dynasty purposes, I think he's the most explosive back. And that's what you're looking for in your running back, a 3-down guy that can take it to the house with any touch. And I think McFarland, more than James Conner, can do that. So it may take a year or two, but I think eventually McFarland takes over that backfield completely. Number 18, is LaMichael Pirine, running back now for the New York Jets. I think I have him a little higher than most people. And this has a few facets to me. Number one, I don't think that Lev Bell is going to be with the Jets long term. Number two, I think that Lev Bell has a lot of mileage on him for a running back, and I expect within the next year or so him to struggle with injuries more. And overall, based on what I saw from Bell, I don't think that he wants to play football anymore, to put it bluntly. I didn't see him running out routes. The Jets' offensive line as a whole did struggle, and that's still going to be a problem. But Perine was one of my sleeper running backs heading into this draft. I think he's very athletic. He can be a three-down back, and I expect that after this season, he'll have the opportunity to take over for Bell, and ideally after the season, Adam Gase won't be there either. I've always said that Adam Gase is the black hole for fantasy football players, and I truly believe that. And given a new scheme and a new coaching staff that I expect, I think Perine will have an opportunity to thrive with the Jets long term. I don't know if I'd necessarily take him as the 18th guy off the board. I try to get the best value as possible, but I think that he can be one of the top running backs from this class. Number 17, I'm going back-to-back Jets now. I have Denzel Mims, who is going to be a wide receiver for the Jets now. Another guy, I think he kind of profiles as a Robbie Anderson, kind of a downfield threat. So you put him next to Brashad Perriman, throw Jamison Crowder in the slot. Not sexy names, but they have solid weapons now there. And Mims is going to get a ton of targets in year one, and he's going to have, once again, every opportunity to succeed there. So I like that landing spot for him. I think Darnold's going to sling it to him. They got their big offensive lineman in round one, which I think was a big need for them, probably their biggest need. And I like that landing spot for Mims. Number 16 for me is Lovisa Chennault, who ended up with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mentioned Colin Johnson, who landed there later in the draft. I like Jay Gruden's offense for fantasy purposes. Whenever he's had a quarterback that's solid at the helm, receivers, running backs, the entire offense has clicked from a fantasy perspective. Although he has been a part of some bad teams, they still put up fantasy numbers. And I expect the Jaguars to do that. I really like Gardner Minshew this year. And this draft, they didn't really replace it or draft a guy that's going to be replacing him anytime soon. So it's the Minshew mania continues into 2020, which I'm kind of excited about. So Chennault should be a big downfield option for him. DJ Chark showed a lot of ability, so they have a nice young 1-2 punch there, and I'm really interested to see how Gardner Minshew develops with both of them. Number 15 for me is one of my favorite receivers from this class, T. Higgins. I think he's the most underrated wide receiver in this class. I think in a normal draft, this is a very deep wide receiver class, as everyone knows. I think we ended up with 35, 36 receivers that were drafted, which seems unprecedented to me. But T. Higgins is a big receiver, very polished route runner, has great hands. He's not the fastest guy, which is probably the one knock on him, but he really reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins. Isn't as big as T. Higgins, but one of those guys that's just underrated because he's not very fast and he just runs good routes and he gets separation, and I really think that's what T. Higgins is going to do. So I'm excited that he gets to develop with Joe Burrow long term. It looks to me like A.J. Green might not be there long term, and even if he is, I think Higgins, Boyd, and Green can coexist with one another, and I would expect that Higgins and Burrow have a really long career together, really long and successful. Number 14 for me is Brandon Iock from the San Francisco 49ers. I think he profiles really well across from Deebo Samuel. Iock is a yards after catch monster, which is what Kyle Shanahan looks for in his offense. From day one, he's going to be the third option behind Samuel and Kittle, so he's going to have every opportunity in year one and beyond. I think you probably take him in the late first, maybe early second of your rookie dynasty drafts, and I think he has a sneaky upside. He has a ton of speed, and I think they're going to use him a lot in a lot of creative ways. Number 13 on my list is Joe Burrow, and I don't have him number 13 because I don't have faith in Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow is a franchise quarterback. I think that he could develop into a top 10 fantasy quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years. But this is more just, it's a one QB league. QB is a very deep position. I think there's a lot of talented wide receivers and running backs in this class that I have ranked above him. So Burrow, he's going to be a franchise quarterback. If you have a quarterback needy team in your dynasty league, nothing wrong with taking him in the late first round. Super flex leagues, he's going to be a top three pick, I would say. So especially if you need a quarterback, so keep your eye out on that. Number 12 is Justin Jefferson, now with the Minnesota Vikings. So I don't love this landing spot as much as other people. Obviously, he's going to have the opportunity from day one to start. He's going to be a viable replacement for Stephon Diggs. The Vikings had the third fewest pass attempts in the league last season, and Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs have never seemed to produce at the same time. Seems like either one of them has been hurt, one of them's been streaky. When Thielen went on his run, Stephon Diggs struggled a little bit, and vice versa. So I really don't trust the Vikings offense to produce two really high-end fantasy-relevant wide receivers. And that's not a knock on Justin Jefferson's talent. I think he's a tremendous down-the-field threat. I just am kind of hesitant to say that the Vikings can support two high-end wide receivers in that offense. I would love to be wrong because I think Justin Jefferson has a lot of talent, but his talent alone and the fact that he's going to start and produce from day one puts him in the first round of rookie drafts. Number 11 for me is Michael Pittman. I really liked Pittman coming in. He's a big-bodied receiver, and I think that he can be an alpha number one type of receiver. And landing with the Colts, I'm really excited about. T.Y. Hilton's always been a smaller, stretch-to-field kind of receiver. So I think from day one, you'll see Michael Pittman start as their kind of alpha big dog receiver. T.Y. Hilton stretching the field. You'll see either Paris Campbell or Zach Pascal in the slot. I think Campbell gets the shot at that because they did spend, I believe it was a second-round pick last year on him. And I'm excited long-term, too. I think Pittman and Jacob Eason could be a really great combination. So I think if you grab Pittman in the late first, early second of rookie drafts, that'll have a huge payoff for you. Number 10, and I think I have him a little lower than other people, but it's just more of a matter of how deep this class is from an offensive standpoint. I have Keyshawn Vaughn, running back from the Tampa Bay Bucks. I will preface this by saying I think from day one he's going to get the third down carries. One of his really big strengths as a running back is pass blocking, which is why I think they went with Keyshawn Vaughn. Obviously, they're going to need somebody that can protect Tom Brady. Pass protection is one of those things that people don't really consider in fantasy football, but that's going to keep him on the field. I'm not a big Ronald Jones fan. I don't think he's shown enough to be a starting running back. I think he's a good backup option, but the fact that Keyshawn Vaughn is a strong pass blocker is going to put him on the field day one, and I think given time, he has more upside than Ronald Jones, so by the end of the season, he'll be a three-down back. Not to mention, we all know that the Buccaneers' offense is going to be strong with Brady, Godwin, Evans, Gronk, you name it. It seems like they have every weapon in the league now. Number 9 for me is Jalen Rieger. I really like Jalen Rieger as a guy that's going to stretch the field. I think he fits in really well with the Eagles' offense and how Carson Wentz operates. Wentz is going to be able to sling him the ball down the field. Once again, from day one, I wouldn't be surprised if they cut Alshon Jeffrey. From day one, I think Rieger is going to have an opportunity to start and play a huge role in that offense, and I could see him and Wentz building a really strong connection. Number 8 for me, and I know I have him lower than a lot of people, and I have a few reasons for that, is J.K. Dobbins. I don't personally see J.K. Dobbins as a three-down back. I think that he's an okay wide receiver, but he's not the strongest. So I have him number 8 in my rankings, and a lot of people are writing Mark Ingram off because he is older, but I think that they're actually going to re-sign Mark Ingram after this season, just because we've all seen that connection that Mark Ingram's built with Lamar Jackson, and I don't think that can be understated. Lamar Jackson is the face of that franchise, so if he goes in and says, Mark Ingram's my best friend on this team, which I'm not in the locker room, but that's what I've heard. So if Lamar Jackson says, I want Mark Ingram on the team, I don't see the Ravens saying no. So I also think that Gus Edwards is really underrated. He's averaged over 5 yards a carry his first 2 seasons, kind of sneakily had over 700 yards. So I think that in year one, it's clearly going to be a running back by committee situation with Dobbins, Ingram, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill maybe mixed in on passing downs a little bit. Long term, it is going to be Dobbins' backfield at some point, but it might be a little longer than people expect. And I really think that you have a quarterback that's going to take 200 carries away from him. So I think that Dobbins is going to be a solid starting option, a guy that you can rely on as a running back too. but I don't think he has as much upside as other guys in this class. Number 7 for me is Jerry Judy, which is probably also a little lower than other people have him. I think that he's arguably the most talented. You can't really go wrong with Ruggs, Lamb, or Judy. I think he's in a good situation. I am a little worried that there's a lot of mouths to feed in Denver now with Judy, Hamler, Sutton, Fant, Lindsey out of the backfield, Gordon out of the backfield. I'm a little concerned with that. I think Judy is the biggest alpha in this class, but I'm a little worried about the landing spot, so we'll see how that shakes up. But he's going to have every opportunity to be a guy that gets you 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns long term for many years to come. Number 6 is CeeDee Lamb for me, wide receiver, Dallas Cowboys now. I think everybody was a little surprised that he fell to number 17. And I know a lot of people, once again, are worried there's a lot of mouths to feed in Dallas. It looks to me long-term that Michael Gallup won't be there. Obviously, Amari Cooper is going to be there with the big deal he just signed. I think once Gallup's contract is up, it's going to be CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper there. The only reason I have CeeDee Lamb above Jerry Judy is because of Dak. Obviously, with a wide receiver, you have to look at the quarterback situation. So that's the only reason I have CeeDee Lamb over Judy, just because at this point Dak is a more sure thing than Drew Lock, even though I think Drew Lock has a ton of upside. Number 5 for me is Henry Ruggs with the Raiders, and I know this is much higher than other people. I really like Henry Ruggs. I think he's going to be a Tyreek Hill 2.0, and I've always said you can't teach speed, and I've seen a lot of players get taken who have speed but can't necessarily catch the ball, but Ruggs can do both. You know, maybe he's not the most polished route runner, but if you have speed and you can catch the ball, with a good coaching staff, you can learn how to run a good route, and I've always believed that that's one of those things you can develop over time. So I think that Henry Ruggs can be the best wide receiver in this class. I don't think he profiles overly well with Derek Carr, but I also don't think Derek Carr is going to be their quarterback long term. So in my opinion, Henry Ruggs is going to have the best career of those 3 wide receivers. From day one, he's going to be the number 1 receiver in Vegas. And you can't say that about Lamb or Jerry Judy. They both have to share the spotlight with other really talented wide receivers. From day one, Henry Ruggs is the most talented wide receiver on that roster, and I really don't think you can argue. I've always thought Tyrell Williams was good. He was a solid receiver, a solid number 2, although unspectacular. I really like Hunter Renfrow in the slot, and I think he's going to have a nice season with Derek Carr. But from day one, Henry Ruggs is the alpha, and I expect him to have a really nice career. Now getting into the top running backs of the class. Number 4, I have Cam Akers, and I mentioned him previously with the question earlier with Darrell Henderson. So I think Cam Akers can be a Lev Bell type of running back. I only say that because he's a very patient runner. You saw that Florida State's line struggled a little bit. I've seen Dalvin Cook comparisons, which I can see as well. But I think from day one that he's going to have an opportunity to split time with Darrell Henderson. Long term, I would expect Akers to take over because I don't like what I saw from Henderson last year. The Rams' offensive line kind of gets a bad rap, in my opinion. They had a really young line, except Andrew Whitworth, who's going to be 100 pretty soon. But besides that, they had a ton of rookies on that offensive line. And if you look at the second half of the season, the Rams line was very, very much improved. So I expect that improvement to continue into this season. And I think you can see that the Rams believe in those young players. They didn't really address the line too much in the draft. So I think given that young line's development, they can be even better. And maybe in year 1, you don't see the return from Cam Akers, but years 2, 3, 4, and beyond, I think is where you really get your return. Number 3, I have Deandre Swift. Few reasons for this. Number 1, the Lions have been known to be a passing offense, and I think the biggest reason for that is because they haven't had a good running back. I think Kerryon's solid, and when he's on the field and not injured, he's been a good running back, but for the most part, they've kind of had to plan their entire offense around not having a running back. But when you look at Darrell Bevell's history as an offensive coordinator with the Seahawks, he likes to run the ball. He wants a 3-down running back that can pound the ball. And I think that's why they spent such a high pick on Deandre Swift. And I was very surprised that they spent the 35th overall pick on Deandre Swift. But I think Darrell Bevell, and that's the reason I have Swift number 3. I think Darrell Bevell wants an offense that flows through the running back. Matthew Stafford's not getting any younger, and I do think he's still a good quarterback, and he has every ability in the world to produce for fantasy purposes. But I think that they want to be a ground and pound team more, and I think that's the style that Matt Patricia comes from, a strong defense, a strong running game. So I think maybe once again Kerryon might be in the way year 1, but year 2, 3, and beyond, I really expect DeAndre Swift to be a 3-down back and a really good offense for him. Then the top 2 backs here, number 2 is Jonathan Taylor, who is with the Colts. They traded up to grab him, which I always like to know. You always have to watch that. When a team's trading up to grab a guy, you know they have all the faith in the world in him. So Jonathan Taylor, they traded up to the number 41 pick to get him. And I was very surprised with this pick as well. There was a few weeks ago where I read an article or a report that Marlon Mack was looking for an extension and that the Colts were talking to him about it. And I guess from this pick that those talks did not go very well. Jonathan Taylor is a legitimate 3-down back. I know a lot of teams are concerned with his use, or a lot of people, I should say, are concerned with his usage in college, and I completely get that. But there's been backs that have had that usage that have been successful in the NFL. Maybe he only has 4 or 5 really top-end, top 10 running back for fantasy purposes years. But realistically, how long do running backs last now? If you get 4 or 5 top 10 running back years out of Jonathan Taylor, you're really getting what you paid for. So once again, Marlon Mack's going to take some carries from him in year 1. His contract is up. Marlon Mack will be completely out of the way. And from there, you're really going to see a new look offense for the Colts. You'll most likely see Jacob Eason, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman. And I'm really excited to see what all those young guys can do together. And I think they're going to run that offense through Jonathan Taylor. You don't trade up for a guy to let him ride the bench and not be your future. So I'm excited to see what Jonathan Taylor can do. And I already mentioned before the Fresh Prince of Hilaire, Clyde Edwards, Hilaire with the Kansas City Chiefs. He went only running back to go in the first round. Andy Reid already went on record saying that he is better than Brian Westbrook, and he plans on using him similar to how he used Westbrook in Philly. So I'm not the biggest Damian Williams fan. I think he's more of a backup running back, but I expect Hilaire to be a 3-down guy from day one, obviously in the most explosive offense in football. So from day one, he's going to have a huge role. I have him projected for 1,200 total yards, 7 touchdowns, 50 receptions. Usually the Chiefs aren't known, I should say Mahomes more specifically, isn't known for passing to his running backs, but I really think Andy Reid's going to develop some plays specifically for Hilaire, get him into space. So I really like the prospects there. But that's all that I have. I just reviewed my top 40 rookie dynasty rankings. I ranked every single player, wide receiver, tight end, running back, and quarterback that was drafted in this year's draft. You can check that out on our website, thefantasyholics.com. I'm also going to be putting this video on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you don't already, make sure you like us on Facebook and share with your friends. You can follow us on Twitter at FantasyHolics1, or my personal Twitter is at Dr. FantasyHolic. So make sure you check that out. And we just launched our website, and we're really excited about it. We have a ton of content going up every single day, anywhere from 3 to 5 articles, not just NFL, but we have MLB, NBA, lots of different content going up. But I'm really excited about these rankings. And the biggest thing I tell people is don't be afraid to change your rankings throughout the off season. I always think there's new reports coming out, new news constantly. So if you see something that changes the fantasy impact of a guy, don't be afraid to change your rankings. So these top rookie rankings are just my addition one, I keep telling people, and they're subject to change with new information. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.